Welcome back, Gen X. In this video, I'll be talking about the pattern God used in Genesis to create everything and how that pattern shows us how to build anything in our lives while understanding what to expect along the way. So let's jump right in. Most people read Genesis like a story, and that's fine. But if that's all you see, you're missing the real value. One of our main problems in life is that we can't see things that are right in front of us. And in this case, I'm talking about recognizing a pattern or a structure, specifically in Genesis. Genesis gives us a blueprint for how kingdom principles work. And if we pay attention to it, we can benefit from it. It's available, but not automatic. So when we look at Genesis, it's not just telling you what happened. It's showing you how things work. It's showing you the pattern. And if you can see the kingdom pattern, you can use the pattern. Some people use the patterns to serve themselves, and some people use them to serve others. Either way, they work. The Bible establishes patterns, principles, precepts, prophecies, and promises. Whether you believe in the God of the Bible or not, it's wise to observe and understand the patterns and principles laid out in it. Most people get stuck waiting for something to feel right or fair or timed perfectly. Instead of recognizing that patterns do not respond to emotion, they respond to application. If you apply them, they work. If you ignore them, they don't, period. It's interesting that the very first thing we learn about God is not that he is loving or merciful or forgiving or omnipresent. He is indeed all of those things. But the first thing that we learn about God is that he is a creator. In the beginning, God created. That matters more than people realize. It is in his nature to create. It is his pleasure to create. It is his will to create. There's something called the law of first mention. The first time something is introduced in Scripture, it sets the tone for how it should be understood. So before anything else, God establishes himself as a builder, a creator, a designer of systems and patterns. That's the foundation. So if it is true that you are made in his likeness, which is what the Bible says, you are not designed to drift. You aren't designed to just consume. You're not designed to react to life. You're designed to build something, to structure something, to bring order into something that currently has none. Now, look at what he starts with. The earth is described as formless and empty. Darkness covers the surface of the deep. He doesn't call darkness evil. The original Hebrew text for darkness actually means unstructured, lack of order, no boundaries, without function, no definition. That's where everything begins. It's the first state of creation. And if we're honest, that's exactly where most people are when they start anything meaningful. They are unclear, unstructured, undefined, not knowing what goes where or what matters most. That's exactly why YouTube is so huge. It's the number one place in the world where people can go to get instructions for how to do stuff, how to, how great it is to have a place at your fingertips where you can watch a video on how to fix your sink, how to start a business, how to understand the market, or how to make a carb-free pizza. We have knowledge at our fingertips. Knowledge used to be leverage, but that's no longer the case. Home service businesses have suffered a blow because of this platform. However, some of the home service providers have capitalized on this by posting their videos and gaining a large audience by helping people in exchange for their attention. Most people will gladly pay attention before they'll pay with money. I do. I would. So if we start something new, it's good to gather information, but it's important to understand that the patterns and principles that the Bible talks about are solid. They're something you can use. This is so we can correctly apply them to information we've gathered. Now that we've established that one of God's most important qualities is that he is a creator, we also see that his intention was to create something good. How do we know? Because he says, and that was good after everything he created. So to be clear, God thought of his creation first. Then he put a structure and principle in place. Then he spoke it into existence with good intentions. These are indisputable facts and the true narrative of creation. We also see good intention is always followed by disruption. This is the first pattern. Before there was light, there was darkness. Before there was order, there was chaos. Before there was a structure, there was confusion. This was pre-structure. So darkness must exist prior to light. This principle holds true in all areas of life. In order for someone to be found, they must first be lost. For there to be order, there must first be chaos or lack of clarity. And I could go on and on with examples one after another, but you get the point. The pattern holds true, and if you know how to see it, then you can apply it to your life. So when you start something, a new business, a new direction, a workout routine, a standard that is good for your life, or even a new YouTube channel, you should expect disruption, distraction, setbacks, hurdles, and obstacles. Not avoid them, because these are the things that are a sign that you're on the right track. It's a sign that you've started something that's good. Many people misinterpret this part of the pattern in their lives or businesses. They think if something feels, messy, unclear, unstable, uncomfortable, something must be wrong. They must be doing something wrong. But Genesis clearly shows us the opposite is true. Messy, unclear, unstable, that is the starting point in every pattern, not the failure point. This is where most people quit. They quit in the exact phase that's required because they didn't recognize it. This is why the phrase, if you don't quit, you win, has become such an integral part of my mindset and the mindset of many successful entrepreneurs across the world. We recognize that having knowledge is no longer an advantage. Knowledge is abundant, and therefore it's less valuable. Experience is scarce, and therefore it's more valuable. This is why Gen X has an advantage here, in my opinion. Now, let's watch what God does next. He introduces light. Let's not ignore the fact that he spoke it into existence. I'll come back to this later. So he said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And immediately after that, he separates light from darkness. Remember, this was before he created the sun and the moon. Consider what light does. Light allows us to contrast things, to see things, discern things, define things, form an opinion or thought about things. In life, light represents clarity, revelation, and insight, right? It is the moment where things begin to make sense to us. You start to see what matters, what doesn't, what belongs, what doesn't. This is the first pattern we as humans are given. Let's make sure we understand the importance of it. Let's make sure we understand it. The creation event was not about addition. In part, it's about identification by separation and definition. Because nothing functions until it is defined or given meaning. And this is where most people make a critical mistake. They keep adding more ideas, more inputs, more opportunities. But what they actually need is separation, identification, and clarity first. It's interesting that God does not remove darkness. He assigns it. He separates it. He gives it a boundary. And then he continues. Waters above from waters below. He separates them. Land from sea. He separates them. Everything follows the same sequence. Creation, disruption, separation, distinction, placement. And when something is placed properly, he calls it good. Not morally good, functionally good. In other words, it works as it was designed to work. Voila! That's the blueprint. Now, let's bring this understanding into your life, because this is where it becomes real. Opportunity is abundant right now. Many people are unaware of the pattern. They don't see the structure. Everything in their life is blended. Money and spending, work and distraction, relationships and confusion. There's no separation, no clarity, no function. It's not lost on me that when I gather together with people of the same faith, there is a unanimous consensus that we all come from dysfunctional families. If you didn't, God bless you. But it is common across all cultures, all races, and all people. Why? Because humans have a common enemy. And as hard as the media tries to say otherwise, our enemy is not each other. The enemy's strategy is to redefine everything, including what is good and what is evil. It's in his nature to create confusion from clarity, chaos from order. This is unnatural. It's the opposite of the pattern we are given in the Bible. You wouldn't throw a bunch of car parts into a hole, blow it up with dynamite, and expect that process to create a functional operational vehicle. This is a pattern designed for failure and for destruction. We have a tendency to focus on what we lack versus focusing on what we have. And as a result, we don't see the value and the opportunity all around us. We are distracted. Many of us are consumed with comparison. And there are some of us who just have thrown in the towel and accepted lies as truth. The enemy's tactics haven't changed since the beginning. It's his mission to create confusion, to blur lines, to remove definition. When we ignore the patterns, the structure, and the definitions that are truth, we set ourselves up to be deceived and blinded by lack, which is a symptom of fear. It's fear-based living. We humans tend to blend everything in life so nothing really works well. And it's not because we're incapable. Often it's just a lack of understanding. Genesis shows us that before anything produces, it must first be separated, defined, and positioned correctly. Think about this. It's true with money. If you don't separate consumption from investment, you'll never create or build anything. It's true with time. If everything has equal access to your attention, nothing meaningful gets done. But more importantly, you're missing the best version of your life. It's true with relationships. If you don't define who belongs in your life and who doesn't, you pay the price of being constantly let down and lots of relational friction and ultimately lonely. This is certainly not motivation, right? This is the prescription of how things work, whether we like it or not. Genesis doesn't just show how things are built. It also shows you what happens when the pattern is broken or ignored. In Genesis 6, we see a shift in the world. Boundaries are ignored. The text says the sons of God, who are likely non-human beings, saw human women. And based on their looks alone, they took the women and had sex with the women. No restraint, no structure, no defined limits. And what follows? Power, dominance, and eventually violence, filling the earth. That is not random. That is the predictable outcome of a pattern designed to destroy. It's removing structure. When separation and definition disappear, confusion increases. When boundaries disappear, control takes over. And when control takes over, violence inevitably follows. We've all heard the saying that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. You can see this pattern everywhere today. People chasing money and fame without any regard for others, only to find burnout and exhaustion waiting for them down the road. There are people chasing relationships without any standards, which inevitably ends up in chaos and sometimes even death. People are chasing opportunities without discipline, discernment, or direction. Everybody wants a shortcut. Principles be damned. This makes it easy to quit when it gets hard. And it always gets hard. That's the pattern. These people never understood what the beginning is supposed to look like. This is why seeing patterns and having structure is so important. Now, let's go back to something else in Genesis that most people completely overlook. In fact, I'd be pleasantly surprised if you know this. God places gold in the land, and he says the gold is good. Now think about that for a moment. Why? There was no market. There's no trade, no economy, no commerce. And yet gold is identified as good. Why? Because value exists before the systems exist. God establishes value before humans ever recognize it or organize it. That is a massive insight. That's a writer-downer. We tend to think value comes from the market. It doesn't. The market recognizes value. It does not create it. So when you're trying to build something, you don't start by asking, will this sell? You start by asking, is this valuable? And what is the problem that needs to be solved? Because if it's truly valuable, there will always be a way to organize it and provide it. That's exactly what Genesis shows. God establishes structure, order, and value before any human system exists. I mentioned earlier that I would bring the fact back up that God spoke everything into existence. This is a good place to pause and consider this. We have to be mindful of the language we use to speak to others, but more importantly, the language we use to speak to ourselves. Yes, that voice in your head that tells you what you're doing now, what you're doing next, and what you've done before, that voice is mostly detrimental to your agenda. It's the one that gives you excuses, permission, judgment, condemnation, dark thoughts, and often thoughts that lead to lack, a feeling of lack and fear. It's like a long list of side effects from a drug advertisement on TV. The ramifications of poor self-talk can and often do include loss of health, family, friends, money, time, and in some cases, even life. Fortunately, the truth is that it's up to us how that voice gets governed. The God who spoke everything into existence says that the power of both life and death are in the tongue. So you can use that same form of communication that destroys for creating something wonderful, something meaningful, something valuable. You can literally use language to enhance your life starting right now. If you're interested in hearing more about how to do that, leave a comment and I'll make a video on how to do that. I've done it several times in my life to great effect. I've tested the principles and patterns, and if they work for me, they will work for you. Now, let's bring this back to your life. If you try to build income before you understand value, you're going to struggle. If you try to build something without a structure, you're going to stall. If you expect clarity before you move through the unknowing, the chaos, the darkness, if you will likely quit. Genesis shows us the full sequence. You start with good intentions. There will be uncertainty. There will be disruption and distraction. You create separation, boundaries, definitions. You establish a structure or a system for the solution. You recognize and consider the value that you're creating. And then you begin to produce. Not instantly, but predictably. That's the difference. Most people are chasing outcomes without understanding the sequence at all. God never skips the sequence, and neither can we. So if you feel like things are unclear right now, good. That means you're at the beginning. If things feel a little messy, good. That means you're in the right phase. The mistake is not chaos, the unknowing. The mistake is staying there without a structure, without a plan, without knowing the pattern. So the question becomes, what in your life needs to be separated? What needs to be defined? What needs to be placed correctly? If you can do that, things start working better. Not randomly, not emotionally, structurally. This is where we get revelation and clarity in our lives. Genesis is not just about creation. It's about principles and patterns and understanding how to move from just a thought to something valuable without guessing. When you understand that, you stop reacting and you start creating and building. This is when the lens with which you see life changes dramatically. Now, to wrap this up, I think many Gen Xers are resistant to subscribing to channels, and I get it. I watched thousands of videos for years before I ever subscribed to a single channel. Frankly, it seemed like a hassle to me. And the truth is, it's pretty easy. So if you would like to share your thoughts with me, I would love to hear them. All of what I'm talking about on this channel is to help people, specifically Gen X, because according to the boomers and the millennials and the media, we are the forgotten generation. I believe we are the chosen generation. If you've seen my previous videos, you know why I believe that, and why there is substantial evidence for that perspective. We have been underestimated. We are the underdogs. We are vastly undervalued, in my humble opinion. As you can see, I'm moving towards a longer format because I want to provide you with insight and understanding, not just a load of good one-liners. I've been in the valley most of my life, and I've never given up. I believe at least part of that comes from being born in this generation. For the fourth time in my life, I've come out of the valley and I'm seeing clearly. Therefore, I want to help as many people as I can to see clearly too. I've tested these patterns and looked back over my life, and it's amazing to see how they've always been there, and they always do what they are supposed to do. They do not fail. We may fail to execute the principles and follow the patterns, but they do not fail when they are properly applied to our lives. These patterns help us in the top 5 categories of life, including time, money, relationships, career, and health. You see, I want this content to be revelatory and meaningful, of course. But my mission is to bring value to your life. So please help me help you. Leave a comment, share this with someone, subscribe to the channel and give me a like. That would be awesome. I would very much appreciate it. You can't lose. Remember something. You can't lose if you stay in the game. We either learn something or we win. Either way, we get better. I can't wait to see you guys on the next video. As always, I'm rooting for you. Be blessed by the best. See you guys soon.